Welcome everybody to the Startup with Chainlink speaker session. We've got an awesome group of rockin' CEOs here to talk with us today about something that is a great concern to any founder who's starting a crypto project: how to raise money. I think that the fundraising process in our industry is extremely opaque. From the outside, very difficult to understand how it works or how it doesn't work. So have three really interesting and smart founders here to talk to us today about their experience getting money from some of the best investors in our industry. First, let me just go around the horn. We'll do some quick intros. Just give me a couple sentences about your project. So let's start with Omer first.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for the introduction, David. I'm Omer. I'm one of the founders at Chaos Labs. Chaos Labs is a cloud platform that lets DeFi protocols build agent and scenario-based simulations to test the economic robustness of their protocols. Since launching, we've worked with protocols, obviously, like Chainlink, Uniswap, Maker, DYDX, Anchor on Terra, Benki, and a bunch of others. And we are, before the Series A, have raised a fair amount of capital. So just happy to answer the questions and hopefully help founders that are in the beginning of the journey.
Awesome. Carlos.
Hey everyone, my name is Carlos. I'm the co-founder and CEO at Uplink. And at Uplink, we're building a decentralized telco. So we incentivize people to deploy connectivity infrastructure, such as Wi-Fi routers, 5G infrastructure, LoRaWAN infrastructure. So that on the other side, we can have enterprises and people basically tapping into that connectivity. So we basically started as a Web2 company. We started back in 2016. So we went to the process of, I would call, traditional fundraising. Now we moved to Web3. We just raised a new round as well. And the experience was a bit different, and I'm eager to share some insights on this.
Awesome. Winston.
Yeah, Winston, co-founder, CEO at WeMeta. We provide the best insights in the metaverse for people to make metaverse land decisions. We also have a land marketplace, sort of like Zillow for the metaverse, and then we provide the best data for that. We're in the middle of our Series A right now. It's fascinating, so I'm excited to talk about that. Our seed round went all right. The logos are behind me. Happy to be here.
Awesome. Thanks all for joining. So let's start with you, Winston. So we got connected kind of in the middle of your seed round. Let's start with this question for everybody. Having gone through the process, what do you wish you would have known about at the beginning of the fundraising process that you know now?
Who any of the investors are. Okay. I still, some of these people, I still have no clue. It's like, who are you? Are you important? Like, no disrespect. It's just like, who are you? And why are you here? And that's for real, because there's thousands of these VCs, or at least hundreds of them. And somehow we got really lucky with David's help, with Chainlink's help, and ended up with a lot of really solid backers. But I'm telling you, like, going in, if I would have gone in by myself, there would have been 0% chance I would have figured out who anybody was. And so I think that was the number one thing, is like, figure out who investors are.
Got it. So having the proper context of the folks who are approaching you, the folks you're talking to, right. What do they bring to the table, who they are. Okay, really good insights. Carlos, same question.
Well, for me, it would be to be more prepared in having a lot of conversations with a lot of people and actually have the processes in place to be able to reply to everyone on time. One of the things I was not expecting is that there's, as Winston was saying, there's a lot of people, hundreds of VCs in this. But a different thing that I experienced from my previous rounds is that these people really like to be in touch. And these people have a lot of insight. So there's also, most of them use Telegram. So there's like direct conversation, no longer only email. So you really need to have the right processes to reply to them on time. And there's many that I forgot to reply, or I replied weeks afterwards. And that was just lack of good process.
Yeah. Makes sense. What do you think, Omer? What would you have told yourself at the beginning of the process in terms of what you learned that you wish you would have known then?
I just said two things really, and kind of also I definitely agree with what was said before. One is having, I think generally you can bucket investors into two different types. One, you're going to bring on for a signal. So it might be like a big name that, you want to tell people like, hey, this person invested in my company, so therefore legitimizes it. And the others is for value, whether you think it's strategic, technical, depending on your project. have a really good mapping of who's who. And if it's someone who you expect to bring value, be very clear about what you're expecting them to do for you and the company, so that there's no confusion moving forward, and that both sides can kind of enjoy the relationship. The second thing that I would say for crypto founders, especially ones that are technical, is that the crypto industry is a lot smaller than you think. So take that. It's not like we're Web2, where in order to talk to like a Fortune 500 company, you need a bunch of very, very high fidelity introductions. You can jump on a Telegram with anybody. So know that before you raise. That shouldn't be the exclusive reason why you're raising, because if you're building a quality project, you can connect with people like Chainlink and other protocols, and they'll get you up to speed and up to date with everybody pretty quickly.
Very good points. And how would you recommend founders think about selecting a lead? Now, I think you made a really important point about expectation setting. I think that's really important, because these are really long-term relationships. But yeah, tell me about your thought process. How would you recommend people approach selecting a lead?
For us, it's just a question of, we want to align incentives in the best way possible. So for us, a lead is going to be a partner who we deem most relevant to what we're doing. So we're a very technical team. And our leads are either typically people who have built very technical businesses and have kind of gone through the 0 to 1 or 1 to 100 process, or firms that basically are very, very dependent on the technology and infrastructure. So we have a common interest aligned, in the security and quality of software space. So that was alignment of incentive there. For a different protocol, if you have a token, it might be distribution, it might be marketing, it might be different things. So know what's important for you.
Yeah, and I think that that's a really good point. And I wanted to bring up one other point you made and bring it back to Carlos. So what do you think is the right way to set expectations with investors that you want to bring into the round? Now, of course, there's the opportunity. Some people decide to do these big party rounds with 10, 20, 30 investors. I don't particularly like that. Some people do. I think if you go for a more concentrated round, you obviously, it's a benefit, but it's also a risk if you don't really align well with the investors you're working with. So what was your process for setting expectations with the major investors that you brought into the round?
So first things first, at least for me, I truly believe that this is still very personal. You're still going to be in touch with these people. So you have to like these people and you have to trust them. Second, one thing that I was told many years ago, and for me, it really makes a difference, is if you want money, ask for help. If you want help, ask for money. And while asking for help and basically sharing our weaknesses, it gave me the opportunity, before we got any cash, to basically understand where these investors could help us. So for us, we're not a party round, but we have a few, we have one major lead and a couple other funds. And for us, it was more based on these conversations, based on our weaknesses and what these funds basically could help us the most, which ones would make sense for us. So that was kind of our thought process.
Yeah, Winston, I know you've gone through one round and you're going through the second. So same question, how do you get the most out of investor relationships, and how do you kind of structure those from the outset to be really productive?
Yeah, so I'd say, in our first round, like I said, we didn't know who anybody was. So we ended up with quite a few. And then from there, essentially, we've just been working with all of them, see who actually helps, who wants to help, see who's interested in your product. I'd say people who ask difficult questions and do really difficult due diligence and actually, require you to write out these long pages that you don't want to write out. Those are probably the people you want to go with. This upcoming round, we're doing much, much smaller. So we'll only have like 4 VCs or so. And so it's a different approach. We did this kind of sort of party round, first round, and now we're not. And so I'd say probably if you want, I'd say probably don't do a party round. I'd say have your lead take anywhere from 30 to 50% of the round. If you're doing 2 co-leads, have them take like 60%, and really align with partners who you want to build with, people who you like, people who you can trust, people who you want to have a 5-10 year relationship with.
That's a really good point. And just to give people a sense, like, what's your typical cadence with your major investors? How often are you talking with them? What's the conversation like typically? What's that interaction like?
Me?
Yep.
It depends. If you're working with somebody on a project, it could be daily. If you're otherwise, it could be once a month. It really depends on how much help you need. I'd say the best thing you can do is build on your own. Like have your plan, build. When you see the opportunity for them to provide value, make sure they're in the loop, make sure they're reached out to, make sure they're up to date on your product, and allow them the opportunity to provide that value, essentially by keeping them up to date with what you need, how you need help, where your roadmap's going. I'd say communicate in that way. There's a lot of investors we don't really talk to. There's some that we talk to on a weekly basis. There's some we talk to on a daily basis. And so it really depends. But with your major investors, that's going to be a relationship that's going to depend on how you're building. You know, are you shipping monthly? Are you shipping weekly? How's that going?
Yeah, I think that what the three of you bring up, I think is super important for founders is that, you know, when you get this money at the outset, when you're focused on it, you're like, wow, this is the most important thing. I've got to close this round. I've got to get these investors in. But your reward for closing the money is a lot of work, right? So I think that's what's important to keep in mind in the context of these rounds in working with investors is, as you've all articulated, I mean, this is a long-term relationship. These people are hopefully in the trenches with you for a long time as you build and scale something meaningful. So Omer, kind of like, if you were to go back, like what surprised you about the process of raising funding? But was there anything you weren't expecting going in that kind of transpired?
First of all, the crypto valuations, it's at least in 2021, it's not something that if you're coming from traditional software that you'd expect. But I also think it's a style of investments. So I think in crypto, because oftentimes most of the investments are token based and they're liquid, you see VCs typically doing, 30, they could do anywhere between 30 to 50 deals a year, which means that their concentration is basically distributed across many projects. And you're not going to get what you would maybe if you've done venture capital before from like a Web2 type of business, it's not going to be the same input. So that's number one. Number two, I just think is the difference between angels and VCs. I think from our experience, we've had a much better experience working with angels just because there's more accountability and ownership when you're working directly with somebody and you make an ask versus you're working with a firm and things can fall between the chairs and it's not always clear who the POC is or what the cadences are, what the expectations and asks that you can make are. So there's also that. And the last thing is that I think because of the environment, like founders can get sometimes upset with their cap table that they're not active, but what I found is that the best way is to get help is to make it very easy by being very explicit in your asks. So it's not a pull method where they need to ask you what's wrong and you tell them this thing isn't working well in an abstract way and expect them to come with answers. If they do that, great. But take the time, understand what you want to ask from everybody and make it very clear. And then that's how you can maximize the return that you get for your capital on the cap table.
Awesome.
And
Yep.
If I can add one thing here, I also think it's important that when you ask for help to someone, to actually share with the others as well. It even makes some of the competitive juices flow and be like, hey, thank you so much, Fund X, you guys helped us with this. By the way, now we still have issue number whatever open, who else can help? So basically for us, it was very important to put these processes in place where one, we have a direct line of contact to each one of them if we need. Second, every couple of weeks, we basically send like a small update, but on the update, the first thing is the problem we had. And second is also like who helped us with the previous problem. This is actually quite helpful.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I want to go back to one point you made, Carlos. So you've raised kind of like from traditional VCs and you've gone through this, Web3 venture raising process. Like, tell people how these are similar or different, or maybe they're completely different. I don't know, but what was kind of like your experience going through more traditional fundraising versus Web3 fundraising?
So the first thing for me was about speed. Like in Web3, things are much, much faster. This I was not expecting. So for Web2, when I first raised our initial round, basically I did a list of all the investors that I want to speak with, basically prioritize them. You invert this list, you start with the ones that are not such a priority, you kind of work your way up. With Web3, I tried to do this, it was impossible, super quick. You speak, they introduce you to someone else, then there's someone else, then there's someone else. Then you're talking with 100 different people. So that was something that I was not expecting. Second, as Omer also said, the valuations. And there's even some some of the funds start competing with each other. And then at the end of the day, it's really the difference on the investors. So there are some who are really here for the long run and they will tell you this, you can trust them on this, but there are others that also feel that basically they just want to make a quick buck, and it's quite important to filter those ones.
Yep, very good points. You talked about some of the things that surprised you about the fundraising process before, Winston, but any other things that, jump out at you about going through this process that you weren't expecting?
Yeah, the volume of people that you talk to on accident, and it's like, God, I've spoken with 100 people. I mean, when we were in the middle of the summer last year, I think before we met you, there was one week where we had like 20 hours of meetings, and they were all half hours. And it's like, why did we sign up for this? And the thing was, we had no clue who anybody was, so we have no clue who the priority of the meetings are. And so I'd say, you know, the ability to come up with a list of the people you want, invert it, like Carlos was saying, it's not going to happen, but have that list. You need that list. And as like our second round came up, it's like, okay, well, we know all the people who are not on the list because we've already spoken with them. And so it's made it a lot easier, I will say.
Yep. So I think if I could summarize some of the things that have been said, I think it's understand the lay of the land, understand who you're going to talk to, who you want to be talking to, who you maybe don't want to be talking to. Understand what you're trying to optimize for. What type of investors do you want to work for? What are the expectations? What are the ways that you want to work together with them? And really, it's trying to optimize for long-term value creation. When you sell part of your company to somebody, they give you money, and in exchange, you try to make whatever share you have and whatever share they have bigger and more valuable. So I think it's necessarily viewed as a long-term process. And I think if you start off with the right people in your corner, you've got a better chance to succeed over time. So before we wrap this up, just so the audience can know, where can the audience follow you and learn more about what you're building? Winston, go first. How can people find you?
Yeah, I'd say WeMeta Tweets is our Twitter. I'm Gumdrop Steve just about everywhere. WeMeta.world is the website. And so I'd say check out any of those. We have a whole bunch of releases coming out in the next 2 to 4 weeks. So in about 2 weeks, we'll be releasing something that I'm not going to speak about on this panel, actually, because I just realized it's completely under wrapped. And so expect something in about 2 weeks. It'll be more of a closed beta, but we'll probably talk about it a little bit publicly. 4 to 6 weeks, it'll be very exciting.
Awesome. Carlos.
Well, me personally, I can be found at Carlos Lee Santos everywhere, but about Uplink, just visit uplink.foundation, Uplink Foundation on everything that is social as well. We're actually preparing a lot of cool things. There's a couple of really interesting news of our technology already being out there and being used that I think people will have fun at least reading about.
Awesome. Omer.
I'm on Twitter at Omer, Omer Goldberg, and the website is chaoslabs.xyz. We constantly publish news, technical news, research, and about new partnerships. So if it's interesting, check it out. And I'm always available on Twitter, so feel free to DM me.
I want to thank you all for having spent some time with me on this panel. Just the audience knows these are 3 of the founders that, as I've interacted with lots and lots of founders, have impressed me most. They're all building really awesome things. With Startup with Chainlink, this is what we kind of want to do for the broader startup community, the broader crypto community, kind of increase the transparency, understanding of how these processes work. Once you understand how they work, they're pretty straightforward, but starting at the outset, most people don't understand how they work. So you can expect more of this content through Startup with Chainlink. And we're looking forward to having more and more great content and working with more and more great founders. So thanks to everybody. Thanks to the audience, and keep doing great things.
Thank you.